I know that, okay.
Sorry.
I know Chris Sini from Republic has promised like large sponsorship dollars coming our way. So he's smiling. See, I told you he's going to write the check right now. But no, I'm really looking forward to having you all there. And I was talking to Oli earlier, we got on earlier, and strength is really in the state chapters. We're getting a lot of legislation and advocacy work uh, all over the country. And Linda's only one person. I wish I could clone her into 50 people, but I can't. But it's really important that we have strong state chapters that represent the composting industry, and it's important because there's a lot of legislation going on all over the country, from compostable products labeling to grants, funding. We're seeing a lot of USDA grants for compost use on farmland. And, we are the organic solution. So it's great to have you all here.
Thanks, Frank. So on my screen, Rodolfo and Alexa have already introduced themselves while people were coming in. So let's hear from Lauren.
Perfect. Thanks, Linda. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Click. I run Let's Go Compost. We're a 501c3 nonprofit based in Scottsdale, but we serve the entire United States. We work with a lot of different U.S. composting councils to provide free composting materials, whether it's our K through 12 education set to national standards, classroom curriculum, materials, X, Y, and Z, all the public schools and community gardens for free food waste access. And then here in Arizona, I'm on the board of Circular Arizona, which is all about the circular economy. I'm a member of 1% for the Planet, Arizona Forward with their waste and circular economy, BPI, which is all, biodegradable plastics, Local First Arizona, plastic pollution, and then with US Composting Council, I'm on their DEIA committee and their Young Professionals Community Service Committee, helping to plan the community service events. Hopefully for next year I'm looking at Garfield Community Garden since it's walking distance from the conference center. And then I also work with US Plastics Pact on their composting work stream and environmental justice work stream. A lot of our work is done to make sure that composting will become more affordable than landfill, and then also keeping environmental justice aspects in mind. We have about 40 volunteers throughout the United States. We do 2 to 3 workshops in Arizona, mostly Maricopa County every weekend. So that's a little bit about us.
Wow.
Thanks, Lauren. How about David Hayward? And David's on mute, so he may be.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to unmute and stop my video. I was just, amusingly enough, just backing up to our compost pile to put my own personal compost in it. So my name is David Hayward. I am one of 3 partners at Restoration Soil. We are a composting facility that has opened last year in Flagstaff. We provide residential composting service. We're expanding our commercial composting services, and then majority of our work is done through industrial customers, and we produce compost, mulch, and amended soil products with a focus on bringing biomass residual waste out of our forest and flood restoration projects that we have up here in Flagstaff, that are kind of a big part of our community challenges, and kind of hoping to provide both composting, but also a solution to some of those problems that allows us to turn those things into value added products. And I'm excited. We won't be at the conference this year. We were at the conference last year, and I'm excited to hear that it'll be in Phoenix, and hopefully in the spring, not the summer, please.
No, we'll be there in January. In January, so
perfect. Great time of year. Great time.
January 27th through 29, if you guys want to get it on your calendar. So how about Ilsa?
Hello, everybody. I'm Ilse Rojas, and I oversee the University of Arizona Compost Cats program. If you don't know about us, since 2011, we have been diverted organic waste from the landfills, and we have diverted more than 20 million pounds of organic waste since then. As an organization, we do several things. One of them is provide residential composting service for the town. We launched residential program in 2020, and we have about 700 participants within community and university people. We also work in very close partnership with the city of Tucson and run commercial services, compost commercial services for the city of Tucson. We have a facility with the city, and what we do is provide education to commercial businesses and hold their organic waste. We are the only organization here who process food waste, food scraps, in addition to manure, paper, and other organic materials. In addition to that, we have a large team providing outreach and education to the city. We have partnerships with Tucson school districts, and we create K-12 curriculum and host educational sessions and outreach through the whole year, reaching out about 10,000 people a year, providing all these education sessions. And also we have demonstration sites to provide experiential learning. We have several partnerships with communities here in Tucson, and we work with different colleges and organizations in the university. So excited to be here. Nice to meet you, everybody.
We always look for volunteers for the conference from Compost Cats too. So it's a great way for them to get in the conference and help us and not pay. So
that will be great now in Phoenix, because when it's so far, it's very challenging, just to put everybody in a plane and everybody else. But Phoenix is 2 hours away. So
I remember when we were in Glendale, you all, in fact, Shoto, I think, was a cat back then. And you all did like the best organic separation and count and weighing in on all the food scrap that we generated at the conference. So yeah, we definitely want you guys there.
Speaking of Shota, hello Shota, how are you? You want to introduce yourself?
Sure, how's it going?
Going great.
Good to see you all. I'm Shota. I'm the director here at Tanks Green Stuff. I'm a former compost cat. And actually, when the compost cats were at the Glendale conference, I was already at Tanks Green Stuff then. But I do remember going to my first conference in Austin, Texas as a compost cat way back in the day. It's good to see you, Frank. At some point, I don't know if we've done this already, but I think it'd just be helpful if Frank or Linda, if you guys could kind of chime in on just generally how the other chapters of the other state chapters of the Compost Council kind of use or what they do and how typically the state chapters function. But I'm the director here at Tanks Green Stuff. We're based in Tucson, Arizona. We're a family-owned business that makes organic compost and landscape materials from diverted landscape trimmings at our recycling and landfill facilities. And you can find our products in 80-some retailers across Arizona and the nation, as well as online. And we also offer bulk product as well as aggregate materials and other sustainable recycling solutions. So yeah, that's me.
So Shota, after the introductions, that's what we're going to spend the rest of the call on. So
okay, all right,
you will hear it. So
fine.
Terry, do you want to say hi? Frank already mentioned you, but maybe you want to tell everyone what you do.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Linda, and thanks so much for this invitation to be on here. I'm Terry Sorg-McManaman, and I am the Director of Professional Development at the USCC. As Frank said, working as the Program Manager for Compost 2025. We're so excited to be in Phoenix. I'll be working on tours, program, and connecting some of the really strong session ideas that we have with some of the professionals in Arizona. So with my role in professional development, we're also interested in being sure we answer the continuing education needs of the chapters through Compost University, what needs you might have, and assisting where we can when it comes to certification and training to strengthen the market in your state. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I look forward to getting to know each of you a little bit better. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Christine.
Hey, Linda. Hey, Frank. Hello, everyone. Chris Cini, Director Organics Operations at Republic Services. So, Lauren, we probably aren't that far from each other. I'm at the 101 in Scottsdale Road at the corporate office. I've worked for Republic now a little over 6 years. So I support all of our organics operations throughout the country. Which means I've spent probably 95% of my time on California the last 6 years. I was there all last week. Probably spent about 80% of my time there now. You know, I support all the compost sites, but a big growing piece of organics is food waste. So I actually spend probably more time on collections, processing, composting, anaerobic digestion of food waste than composting these days. I'm a board member of USCC. I'm also a board member of the California chapter of USCC, which is ACP, the Association of Compost Producers. In a previous life, I owned and operated 1,100 ton per day compost facility that operated every day of the year, and I'm thrilled I don't do that anymore. I also helped the city of Phoenix start up the compost site here near 27th and Lower Buckeye, so just southwest of downtown. So nice to meet everyone, and thanks for coming. This is very exciting.
Super. Two more folks, I think. How about Jacob?
How are you guys doing? My name is Jacob Haggard. I work for Vermeer Mountain West. So we are a Vermeer dealership located in our corporate offices in Chandler, Arizona. We actually cover a pretty vast territory. So we actually cover Alaska, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Utah, Las Vegas, Arizona, New Mexico, and El Paso, Texas. So we are a distributor and dealer for grinders, trommel screens, compost turners, all the fun stuff that you guys talk about and what you would be using to create your compost and your green waste and get everything grinded and trommel screened out. And yeah, we're excited to be involved into this.
Great. And Mark. Are you there, Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. My Zoom's in and out.
Okay.
I'm Mark. I'm the operations manager at Go Green Organics in Yuma. And we've been here about 4 years. And we do about 100 to 150 tons a day of compost. So we're looking forward to this.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you're all here. I know that sometimes people already know each other, but I think this is just getting organized through what Oli has done. So I thought that the introductions would be really helpful because you'll find out that we're going to need some of you to work together to lead this and to carry this forward. So it's good that you know each other and what you do. So I am going to, I apologize for doing this through a PowerPoint, but it's the best way for me to not miss anything that I'm telling you about how to form a chapter. So I'm going to get that started now and tell you that this process that we have that I'm going to be explaining is a process we've used for 3 years now since we formed a chapter advisory committee. And that was recommended as we started to see our chapters growing from about 4 chapters about 6 years ago to now having 15 chapters. So we had to streamline things more. And we also were, sorry, my cat keeps knocking my computer. We also had to learn what things were chapters struggled with and what things were best practices to make sure you would succeed. So some of this may seem bureaucratic to you, but trust me, if you don't do these things, you will find areas where you might struggle. So hopefully you will realize that as you're going through the process and say, we're doing this for a good reason. So let me see if I can get my, hold on, everything's blocking my thing to make this a slideshow. Let me, slideshow, there we go. Okay. right in front of my nose. Okay, so what you see on this first slide is the chapter mission, which the chapter advisory committee put together. And it's basically chapters act in various ways that they find their community, their state, their market wants to do. But basically it all comes back to the same things that the USCC wants to do, which is, making composting something that is science-based, quality, sustainable, climate sequestration and other climate benefits. So and they do things that we do as well, promoting best practices, holding trainings of their own, et cetera. So that's where we derived our mission statement from. 1 second, my cat's driving me crazy. So these are our chapters now, the states where we have chapters. And we have definitely pushed the fact that compost is local. Not only do we know that compost is local in terms of transportation and use, et cetera, but the best way to influence composting in your state is by people who know what's happening in your state. Like Frank mentioned at USCC National, we don't always know what's happening. And I know in places like New Mexico and Arizona, you all have definite different challenges than many of the states that are out there. So you're going to know what's best for your chapter to do. So there are some great benefits to being a chapter. We do provide you your first logo, and many chapters come to us because they want the credibility of affiliating with USCC, whether it's because they want to draw members to trainings and draw members to their specific organization, or whether they want to be able to say we're a chapter of the U.S. Composting Council when you go to your state house. A lot of chapters tell us that it's that credibility that they want to be able to extend by saying they're a chapter of USCC. Also, being a chapter gives you a framework for networking and communications among yourself and among other chapters. We do a lot of different during the year, we do a couple of Zoom meetings that are very friendly, and we'll probably invite your formation committee to attend our next Zoom meeting, which will be in late March, where we'll have a theme and everybody gets to go in breakout rooms and talk about the theme. And it really helps you to understand what other chapters are doing, which I can't always give you from the USCC headquarters. When you hear it from people like you, it makes a big difference. And we do a chapter bulletin that tells kind of a roundup of what all the chapters are up to a couple of times a year. So it gives you ideas of who to talk to and what you can be doing. And we do give you some marketing support in terms of we have a Canva premium subscription. So a lot of chapters don't have a lot of money for marketing, and we have a lot of templates and things where you can design flyers and design, things that you need to get out to your community. So this link here is a link that goes to our website, which is compostingcouncil.org/state chapters. And this particular document, and I didn't hyperlink that, I'm sorry, you would have to type it, but you can go to the state chapter page, which is compostingcouncil.org/state chapter. And you can find the benefits of being a chapter. We have a whole document that tells you a lot more than this, but I was just trying to hit some of the high points for you. So some other things that you can do, my computer's slow, that are benefits when you're a chapter is financial support. So we have something called chapter support funding. So one of the reasons we want to have chapters is we want to connect USCC members with the state. So that way you have more people that can be advocating at your state house, more people to invite to your events, more people that can hold a training or a tour. So what we do is if you try to bring in more and more members to the USCC, you get a 10% share of every member that joins the USCC and that renews each year. So that provides some base level funding. Some newer chapters get $600, $800, but some of the chapters who have been there a while are getting $4,000, $5,000. So that's a really nice benefit. It helps you, it helps us. Some chapters actually start their own membership programs on top of that, where, and I know that Oli is out there doing some sponsorship fundraising, and you may decide to, have a platform where people can sign up $50 a person or some number to be a member on top of a USCC member if you want to get additional funding for your chapter. So I wanted to be sure and tell the difference between that. So just because they're a chapter member, if you do that, doesn't mean they're a USCC member until they join the USCC. There is a difference between those two things if you start a membership program. And then we've also started a new program this year that gives chapters points for things that they do that are kind of above and beyond the basics. And they're things that really are best practices, and it takes time to build up to some of these things. Like, for example, you might get points for holding a state summit on composting. And there's a bunch of other things on there too, and you'll see it on that webpage, but you get you convert the points to funds. So that's some additional funding that is available. And that is the first time we're doing it this year. We actually have all the chapters applying for it, and we're getting ready to roll it out. The compost operations training course, the Compost Foundation puts the training course on. And when you're a chapter, you have a lot more influence with CREF, the foundation, in terms of putting on one of these operations courses. They go to states that don't have chapters, but they tend to want chapters because chapters have ready people there who know the teachers, who know the hotels, who know the sponsors. So they work out that they can share revenue, let you keep sponsorships if you get sponsors for lunches, etc. So that's another way to get financial support. We also do advocacy work, as you know, and we try to have every chapter come to the Legislative and Environmental Affairs Committee. You get a seat on the committee. So that way we get more of a sense of what state bills you need support from the national for. And we also go back to the chapters increasingly these past couple of years with the Compost Act and the Farm Bill and PFAS. And what we've been doing is through the chapters arranging virtual constituent meetings with members of Congress, occasionally with an agency if it applies, to kind of get your take for them. When we go into Capitol Hill, and, Frank and I were saying, oh, well, this is what we need. When they can hear from you all, from your state, and if we can go to a meeting in person, and either if you can fly in, which most people can't, but we can use our phones and Zoom you into that meeting, it has a lot more impact than just us being there. So that's another great one for you. And the last one to mention, and this is 3 years now since we've had the CAC, is that we allow 2 chapter leaders to come tuition-free to the conference so that they can spend the training day. We have a whole chapter training day where we find topics that are specific to chapters. You hear from other chapters about how they're doing advocacy, how they might be handling membership. We have speakers come in. We had an attorney this year talking about compliance. So that's a great thing for chapters to spend time together, really digging into their issues and also coming to the conference. And we also do, if you've been to the conference this year or last year, they were really big. The first year was after COVID. It wasn't very big, but we do a chapter networking soiree where each chapter gets a table to put out, materials that you have, and people from the conference come to that networking event. And you may be able to get more chapter members through that. So that's another thing we do. Let's see. I kind of would like to get through this before I ask for questions. So if you all could jot down your questions, and then we'll do them all at once. And I see there's probably some coming in the chat. What I usually do when I do this presentation, and since I knew Frank was coming, I didn't recruit someone, but I usually recruit someone who's been in chapters for a long time to say why chapters are important. And Frank, since you are here, I didn't warn you, but you were, I think, one of the early founders of the North Carolina Composting Council. Do you want to mention and this is old, no, you were a USCC board member at the time too. Do you want to mention why forming a chapter in North Carolina was important and why people might want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, there's, our whole industry is regulated at the state level, both from a product sales point, your Department of Agriculture. And then, connections with your land grant universities, your state universities. It's real important to have that connection for research work. And then just in legislation, bills that come up in your state legislature on composting, or even there's a lot of bills that come up that may hurt the industry that you need to be aware of. So having that connection and having a common goal amongst, at the time I had my own facility, and competitors, I had competitors, they were all involved with the council, but we were all in it for one reason, and that was to promote the industry and promote compost use within the state of North Carolina. So that's really important. I think from a standpoint of being at the table and having a voice is probably the most important thing. Networking, and then also being involved with any legislation that comes by at the state level. So those are definitely the important things. Linda, also when you mentioned talking to state legislators, we talked to Senator Kelly, and we had Mr. Sini on, and one of their staff members was involved, and we actually conferenced that call in via a Zoom video, and there were a lot more attentive when you have someone from your state talking to a state representative, or either in this case a senator, to be able to have that impact, because a lot of it, people don't know that the size of the industry and the growth of the industry and the impact of the industry from an economic standpoint, as well as a ecological standpoint too.
Thank you. So now I'm going to get more into the nitty-gritty, and this is the last part of the presentation, so then we can get into your questions, but there may be a lot about this. So step one of forming a chapter, and if you have, I think I have it on one of these slides upcoming, if you have looked at the website and downloaded the formation document, as soon as I get there, I will put it in the chat. All of this is spelled out in detail. I'm just highlighting it so you'll understand what we were trying to do. So the first step, and I feel like you all have already done this because you're here, is to form a group of like-minded organizations and folks, and to try, it sounded like in your introductions, to try to represent as much of your state as you can. If everybody comes from one side of the state, it's kind of hard to form a very holistic organization. So it sounds to me like you guys are well on the way for this one. Oh, there it is. So the other thing, and I'll put this in the chat. I don't know if you all can click on this thing. This is the rules of what you have to do to get started. So if anybody wants to look at that and follow along. What you should do is download that and go through all those different pieces, and I'm going to go through them briefly now. But you may want to have different people work on different pieces. It's really not fair to just load everything on one person, and it's not sustainable for your chapter. So the way these are organized is you get points for getting the things done that are on there. And tier 1 are the really basic things. You must get these done, and I'm going to explain them. And tier 2 are optional, but they are really important to try to do to the best of your ability. So what do I mean by all of that? Let's get there and tell you. So tier 1 these are some of the key things. You have to have at least 5 USCC members in your state. And I believe we've already sent the list to Oli, I think you're well qualified for that, and that's not a problem. We do request a 5-member petitioning committee, just for that reason that I mentioned, so that you can split the work up and have everybody do different things and focus on different things. 3 of the people in that committee must be USCC members. Sometimes what we see with chapters is they may have 2 others who are just exploring and trying to figure out, and they're willing to be on the formation committee. but they don't join until the chapter actually forms, which is fine. It's good to have it's good to make all kinds of perspectives available. So the chapter advisory committee has been fine with that. And we will want you to come up with an initial, whichever format of chapter you go to, which I'm going to talk about. We do want you to have an initial board of directors. You can choose whether it's going to be 5, 7, 9, whatever. We recommend an odd number for voting purposes. But you should at least have that group able to present to the chapter advisory committee. Okay, so structure, you can either go out, and I think that's what Oli may have gotten started. You can go out and get your own 501c status, which sometimes provides you more flexibility over the long run. And, you need to get a lawyer just to make sure you've gotten through all the proper steps and they help guide you along the way. We don't always have a pro bono lawyer. And we know that sometimes volunteers, it's a hard lift to put all this together by yourself and then find a lawyer to pay. So we also made the option that you could have a 501c organization as your backer, your financial backer. Ideally, we want a membership organization so that there is the same kind of feel and understanding. So in a lot of states, if they don't want to get their own 501c, they will get a recycling association. So I think Arizona probably has a recycling association or something similar to that. And just so you know the basics, 501c3 is actually a charitable organization. So if you think you're going to be applying for a lot of grants, or if you think you're going to want to give people tax benefits for donating to your organization, C3 might be the one you want to choose, but you're relatively limited in the way you lobby. You have a very small number of hours that you can spend really lobbying and pushing for a particular person or bill, saying we want you to vote for this or whatever. If you go with a 501c6, you have much more flexibility there. Now with the 501c3, you can educate about a bill and about an issue, which will cover most things that you want to do. So most of the organizations are going for C3s, I'm finding, but if you really think advocacy is going to be one of your big things and you're not going to be needing a lot of grants, you may want to go with the C6. We also require that if you get, for example, the Arizona Recycling Coalition or whatever it's called, if you get them to be your backer, they have to keep your funds separate from their funds. We've had situations where it's been a real struggle with chapters who have a financial backer, that the funds get mixed with their general fund. They find that their money was going to recycling projects and not composting projects, and it's just real awkward to fix up. So it's better to have an MOA or an MOU, whatever that organization wants to call it, stating that and stating how you're going to work together. And we do have samples of that if you go that direction. In Tier 1, we're also going to be looking for your group to have some basic financial resources. What most groups start out with is just a couple of donations to set up the PO box, to get the IRS. I think the IRS is only $10 or something, but there may be some fees along the way, and having sponsors to pick up those fees is a real good sign that you have some good resources out there. If you want to try to do more fundraising, which I think you all have been talking about, that's great too. We also want you to have some kind of a very beginning budget. You have to know what you're going to accomplish. So that forces you to talk about, why are we doing this? What might we want to do? It doesn't have to be, down to the cent or whatever. We just want to see that you've thought about categories where you might be spending money. Okay, let's see. I think I'm almost through. So Tier 2 are the points that you can add to your basic points, which will make your application look even better. And these are for things like, if you're planning some general events like a networking happy hour, if you want to do a statewide event, which is a big lift for a beginning chapter, but if you wanted to do some kind of statewide summit or something, some chapters have done that. We want to know what committees you're thinking about starting out with. You know, most of them start with the membership and advocacy. You'll have your executive committee. Even if you go with the 501 organization backing you, we still want you to have a leadership committee, by the way. You don't have to call it an executive committee. It can be your steering committee, but you really do need someone to run that small group, even if you're not incorporated yourself. We look for some kind of a description of how you might recruit members or reach out to other people. And we do look for you to have some kinds of advocacy activities, whether it's just, you know, you're doing something with International Compost Awareness Week and posters, you know, you're having some of you might have tours with your legislators, just something that your chapter is encouraging when it comes to advocacy. And then the last step is to contact us through me, the chapter relations director, or whoever that is, to make sure that there's not already a chapter, which we've already verified that, and to confirm the USCC members who already exist in your state. So always already taken care of all that, so you're set there. Once you feel that your group has gotten, number one, your basic points on that sheet for those things I described, and you know, your tier 2 points as well, send your checklist to me and CC Frank, and we'll take a look at it, kind of see if we have questions or if it looks like you're on the right track to go on your next step, which is going for, and we will talk to you too. We'll probably call you and have a call with, you know, your formation committee. And if things are not, if things are good, then we will put you on the schedule for the chapter advisory committee that meets once a month. And they usually have a lot of questions for you. Sometimes they're questions that might send you back for a month to go back and do something specific. Like with Georgia, it was confusing who their fiscal sponsors were. So we asked them to go back and clarify their formation documents. And then the next month they were in. One thing I did want to mention, and we are thinking this may be an issue this year, is we set a cap on the number of chapters to onboard to 3 per year, because right now I'm the only one doing this. We're going to have another staff member, Hessa Al-Magluth, who's going to be helping me, but it's a lot of work to kind of be responsive to you all. There's so many questions in the initial stages. So, you know, we are only onboarding 3 chapters a year. You're the only one I mean, you guys are further ahead than anybody else, but we have chapters in Indiana and Wisconsin, and actually the MDDC chapter has been grandfathered in as a committee, but they are getting their 501c status. So they could be a third. We have a bunch of other states that are asking questions, but no one as far along as you or these other 2. So I have a feeling you're going to be fine. But if there comes a point where, you know, if you're stuck because something hasn't come in that you need, and the CAC absolutely thinks we have to have that, we may have to put you on hold and another chapter may move in ahead of you. But like I said, I think that it's all going to work out for you all because you're the first one in the gate. And then once the chapter advisory committee approves you, it goes on to the board of directors and they approve you and you are, woohoo, a chapter. So, and there are other resources that are really good on the state chapters page, which is the chapter playbook. And that gives you a more in-depth description of how our chapters work and examples of how much more than I could tell you. You will be able to read on your own. And then lastly, I'm going to put in the chat, our chapters, it's actually something they can get points for. Our chapters love to mentor other chapters. And we have this list of all of our chapter leaders here, which I'm going to put in the chat also. You can feel free to reach out to someone you may know or someone from a nearby state that may be able to have a phone call with you and answer questions about, you know, how they did things or what they found was a problem. So with that is my presentation. I didn't look at how, all right, 12:44. So I'm sorry for taking so long, but I am ready for the questions that you have, and I will turn this thing off so that I can see what questions are in the chat if there are any. And hopefully, Shota, that was a lot more of what you were looking for.
I've got a couple, Linda. You mentioned that you provide the logo for chapters that are forming. What about, do you do web hosting, or do you have like a corporate Zoom account that we can piggyback off of so that we don't have to get those things?
Yes, I can send you information about that. We do have on our website the ability to sub-host chapter websites, and we do have a fee for that. And we also have a small fee for doing, like if you want to use our webinar function, most chapters have seemed to be able to get along with free Google Meets and stuff for meetings, but sometimes they want to hold a webinar, and I think the fee is pretty small. I think it's around $100 or $200 if you want to do a webinar. So we can help you with that, and I'll send you info about that.
I was going to mention, I'm on a lot of boards here in Arizona, so I'm more than happy to work on the board here. Mostly because I feel like all the other sustainability and environmental boards that I'm on, I'm always the only one talking about composting or landfill, period. Which has been a really big issue in the state. I think a lot of the funding is going to EV and solar, where we know that most people who are most affected by climate change are the least likely to ever be able to afford solar or an electric vehicle. That said, I am on the board for Circular Arizona, who also needs 3 more board members. So if anyone here wants to go on that, that would be great. But the Arizona Recycling Coalition swapped to Circular Arizona at the last board meeting a few weeks ago. I work really closely with the treasurer, Karen. So I'm sure they would be interested in fiscally sponsoring us, especially since they've been around for, I believe, 27 years. So that could be a really good route that we could take that might speed up the process.
I saw that someone asked for the PowerPoint too, and it's there in the chat, and I'll send out a wrap up of all those links I put in there too.
Yeah, the other thing too is, I mentioned, we have other state chapters. We have their bylaws. There's a kind of a template that we'd like to see state chapters use specifically for bylaws, and also the articles of corporation, those kind of things. So we can provide those for you as examples. Obviously, your state's a little different, and how you file may be a little bit different. But the hardest thing to get is the nonprofit status. That takes a couple of months. But when you are independent, you control the purse strings, you control everything coming in and going out. So those are important things as far as filing for the IRS. If you earn under $50,000 a year in revenue, which is a kick-ass state chapter, if you can do that, then you have to file a long form. But otherwise, it's an easy form, which is literally takes you about 5 minutes to do online. So your tax burden is not a problem. There are some free nonprofit. You might want to check within your state resources within the state. It costs roughly anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500 to get a lawyer to get your IRS status. I highly recommend getting a lawyer to do it, or if you can find a lawyer that that'll do it pro bono, because if you check the wrong box on that form, it's a nightmare. But it does take about 3 months to get that from the IRS. So, but you guys can be talking and getting things into place while you filed for that. So that's don't think you have to wait for it.
Yeah, we got Let's Go Compost. We got our 501c3 last year. I think it was like $500 total for filing fees. It only took us 30 days, which was great because there wasn't a huge backlog. But yeah, I'm fine going either route. I think if we do want to go for more of an advocacy route, which I think could be the most impactful, 501c6 could be the best kind.
And we've seen some chapters that actually have started with a 6 and then realized that they weren't eligible for grants, and they formed a C3 to go after grants. But C6s are available for grants too. I don't think that they're not. Just some specific ones they're not. But And then state grants is the other thing. I'm sure there's some state grants that you can go after.
Frank,
Yeah.
what are people going, what are people using the grants for? What kind of grants are state chapters applying for?
So,
Go ahead, Linda.
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
was going to say Minnesota, just MNCC got one of the Outreach and Education EPA grants. They got a huge grant. Forget how much,
I think it
maybe
was
a
$1
million.
million. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're using it to do I don't think Minnesota had the kind of focused statewide plan that they wanted to see, so they're going to do work to provide a statewide educational plan.
Yeah.
So
I would
that's
say
one that I've heard about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
EPA and USDA are the big ones, and then whatever state grants that you can go after. Some states have also lobbied for tax exemption on equipment that's used for organics recycling, whether it be your collection equipment, your receptacles, any kind of screener, grinder, shredder, turner, or whatever. Those kind of things too. So there are a lot of good examples. And when you get into the state chapter hood and you speak to other state chapters, just networking with them, with coming up with ideas, and a lot of cutting and pasting on things that you could use is a huge advantage. When I started the North Carolina one, we didn't have any of that, so we had to kind of create our own. But we're here as a resource for you. Linda's a great resource. And we definitely want to get you guys fast track as soon as we can, get you on board. I'm going to jump off this call, but if there's anybody that has any questions, you can always get back to me. You know how to reach me. But I appreciate all your time. Thanks.
Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
I got 3 quick things here because we're getting down to the end. Just to note, not everybody that had an interest was able to make the call. Like City of Tucson had a last minute issue. So there's a bunch of people that I know wanted to be here.
I did record it if you want. I'll send you the
that's
recording.
great. That's great. Perfect. I'll follow the meeting up with an email later today about action plan, things that we can do as far as who want, a mechanism, little table or something that people can say, do they want to serve on the board? Do they want to serve on the executive committee? Do they have feelings about 501c3 versus C6? But I wanted to follow up, close with one thing that Frank touched on, and that is his experience in North Carolina. At WORC, Washington Organic Recycling Council, if we didn't have a state organization, we would not have been able to fight, for instance, first at a state level, the clopyralid issue, and second, that went to a national level where, because of the work that WORC did, we were able to have a national voice to fight some of the petrochemical companies. And along with that, there's also good initiatives, one of which was called Soils for Salmon, which impacted every single watershed in the state. And I believe that's been a model to some other states too, about the connection between stormwater runoff, pollutants, and how compost can fight that and actually have a tie down to the level of the ability of salmon to spawn in rivers. So we don't have salmon here, but and we don't have clopyralid here. But what we do have, it's the new late hot topic, is PFAS contamination. There's 3 PFAS contaminated sites in the city of Tucson. And I'm sure that when we get the word out that we're forming, and by the way, the AZDQ supplied us with a list of all of the people in Arizona that have applied for composting permits, which is, I think, around 40 different entities. So once we get the word out to them that we're forming, I'm sure that there's going to be the clopyralid issues, the PFAS issues of Arizona that will come to the surface, and that'll be things that we can communicate in our work plan and formation committee to Linda, and which is the kind of thing that she's looking for. So that's all I've got. does anybody else have anything before we head off?
I just, I'm so sorry to like keep on adding in. We work with,
Oh, fine.
okay, we work with a lot of cities on their climate action plans just to see where they're putting funding. And time again in Maricopa County, where most of our work is done, we see all of these cities from Scottsdale to Avondale to Tempe to Phoenix saying that composting is a solution, but they're putting zero funding into it and expecting people to backyard compost, where most people live in an apartment. So I'm really excited this is happening. I think that we all know that backyard composting is not going to be the solution for bulk waste. And we just need to get the cities a little bit more educated about composting. I don't think I always say it's not the sexiest thing in the whole world, but that's why it works, right? That's why we can help reduce our methane as much as we can. So I think including as many of the city representatives as we can on the composting chapter will be so helpful, just in terms of educating the government officials that control the funding about why it's such a great solution compared to other methods.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I also think this is super important. Promoting the vision of sustainable gardening, sustainable agriculture, and that's part of what we do in Soils and Water. Obviously, we do a large composting. We're a large composting manufacturing company, so we do compost and vermicompost, but we are also partners with a nonprofit, Urban Farming Education, and in there we do a lot of what it is. We are in Malawi. We are doing sustainable agriculture with composting and vermicomposting, and then Urban Farming Education has been in domestic violence centers, schools. We've been in churches. So we're doing a lot of this because we do believe that it is important to promote what it is, organic farming. With Soils and Water, one of the things that we have, and I talked about this to Oli yesterday, it was that we call it Make the Mess a Green Initiative. And what we do is that in a sandy soil, we put a lot of our compost and a few other organic amendments, and we were able to turn very unfertile soil into fertile soil. So these are the things that we want to start promoting, and I believe that if we're together, we're more. So I just want to reiterate my wanting to do this, and also I want to keep that in mind, and if we move forward, we are all into it.
That's awesome, Rodolfo. I love, and by the way, what was it, 1990, Terry? Washington, D.C., formation of the U.S. Composting Council. I remember one of the presenters saying that he was a pioneer in the composting world. And he said, do you know how you tell that you're a pioneer? And he stood sideways and said, it's because the arrows are in your back. And being at the head of the initiative. And that's what we are in Arizona. And it's great, super great to see Lauren, Rodolfo, young people who want Shota, who want to take Ilsa, that want to take this banner up and carry it forward. So I'm super excited. And Linda, thank you so much for the time, for the information, the links, and we will be one of those three.
Yay. I kind of felt that.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
honestly, I don't know if that was a closing, but I just wanted to tell a little bit more. My background is in aerospace engineering. So I went and I came to work at Soils and Water because we're doing a lot of innovative systems. But one of the things that I wanted to tell you guys is that, to be honest, I was I didn't know anything about gardening. But as I came into what it is, everybody talking about sustainable gardening, I realized how important it is, and how lack of knowledge we have at the moment. So I just think it's extremely important, and that's it. We can turn anybody, if you turn an aerospace engineer into somebody that's conscious about what we're doing and how we should be treating the environment, and the different good benefits of doing composting and vermicomposting, I think we can do it with everybody. Yeah.
Well said.
Awesome. Linda, I gotta hop off myself, so,
All right. We'll
Thank
be
you so
hearing from
much.
you, I'm sure.
okay. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.